Are you planning on making a massively multiplayer online role-playing game? Are you currently brainstorming all sorts of different regions you wish to incorporate in your MMO? Are you planning on using Native American and other indigenous cultures as inspirations for one or more of your regions? Well, if you do, you have quite a bit of things to look out for. Hopefully, this video will help you know what to do and what not to do when creating areas inspired by indigenous cultures. First, ask yourself why you wish to include these cultures in your MMO. Are you hoping to provide representation for a largely underrepresented group of people in this medium? Do you wish to write stories that cover the experiences of Native American and other indigenous people? Or do you simply want to use their culture as some sort of aesthetic for one of the regions in your game? As we'll soon go over, don't do that. It's quite racist. Let's take a look at an area from one of my favorite games growing up, MapleStory. The Parian region has been part of the game since its launch in 2003. Parian has quite a few references to Native American culture, such as the tiki huts found throughout the town. The skulls scattered across town is not the best way to represent an area based on Native American culture, however. Notably, Parian has very little importance in the main story of the game. In fact, of the 50 classes in the game, only 3 are actually required to be in Parian at all, that being the Explorer Warriors. They are each here for the same reason. As they start off as only beginners on their journey, the player is instructed to go to Parian to meet with the warrior instructor Dances with Balrog. Yes, he is a reference to the movie Dances with Wolves, named after the titular character, who is a white man. But worry not. His original name in Korean translates to stands with open fist, which is a reference to the character stands with a fist from the same movie. This character, instead, is a white woman. We've managed to go 2 for 2 here on naming him after white characters. Notably, Stands with a Fist is also referenced through the character Ayan, who just so happens to be a white woman that is essentially the exact same backstory. What we see with Parian is a lack of substance when it comes to representing Native American culture. There's hardly any relevant story in Parian, and any story that is here has nothing to do with the culture that Parian is based off of. Instead, it's just an area that somewhat resembles the Badlands that looks like it hasn't changed from any stereotypical views of Native American culture since the 1800s. Parian simply uses Native American culture as an aesthetic. What makes this especially harmful is that right next to Parian is Kerning City, which is based on a much more modern city. While it has some of its own issues with stereotypes, Kerning City does make Parian seem much less advanced in comparison. This is what Elizabeth Bird discusses in her article, Gendered Construction of the American Indian in Popular Media. In her article, she discusses how Native Americans are placed in a time warp where their culture is consistently represented as if it had not changed for centuries, which is simply not the case. Parian has the exact same issue here with its noticeable lack of technological advancements compared to neighboring towns. What we can learn from MapleStory is do not use Native American culture only as an aesthetic when making your area, and especially do not mainly draw inspiration from White Savior Complex, the movie. Another MMO I'll be discussing is Wonderland Online. Unlike MapleStory, each character starts off the exact same way, which involves them getting stranded on a random island after a shipwreck where they meet a guy who offers them a raft to escape. Afterwards, the two leave the island and the raft eventually breaks once they find themselves at North Island. While this is unknown to the player right away, North Island is actually supposed to be New Zealand, right next to Australia. Like most areas in the game, however, it is nothing like the real-world counterpart. The first area you find yourself in is called Kalan Village. Kalan Village does have quite a few similarities to Parian when it comes to its issues. The village is characterized by its architecture. All of the buildings are huts. Overall, Kalan Village has the same vibe of Parian with its lack of any technological progress. Where Wonderland Online differs, however, is the overall context of the game. Where MapleStory has Kerning City right next to Parian, just about every area in Wonderland Online is not modern, and any instance of modern technology is seen as an exception. The game has areas for ancient Egypt, Rome, feudal Japan, and many other areas. In this case, North Island fits right in. The story, however, while a teeny bit more fleshed out than MapleStory's Parian, still has some issues. In North Island, you come across 3 key characters, all of whom join you on your journey, that being Roka, Shaolan, and Nis. As you can see, Wonderland Online has a bit of a whitewashing issue. However, this is a general issue across the entire industry. Still, don't whitewash your characters if they're supposed to represent a non-white culture. Each character goes through some sort of struggle when you meet them in North Island. Roka gets framed for her father's death and nearly gets executed by the neighboring village. Xiaolan witnesses the murder of her grandmother before getting kidnapped and nearly murdered by the same bandits. Nis, the only foreigner who can only speak a language no one is able to understand, nearly gets executed because she's an outsider. I don't know why we don't suffer the same fate, other than the fact that we were able to understand the people of the village. Each of these characters faces violence, two of whom face the wrath of the village. While Wonderland Online manages to avoid the stereotypical lack of progress commonly seen for many indigenous cultures, only on a technicality of the entire world not being modern, it does not avoid the stereotypical savageness that many indigenous cultures face. Just about this entire video up to this point has discussed what not to do when incorporating indigenous cultures. That is because it has historically not been handled very well in MMOs. For both of the games discussed in this video, indigenous cultures have been portrayed as extremely traditional. This was handled to varying degrees of success, but both had issues because of it. If you wish to incorporate traditional indigenous culture into your MMO, it is key to avoid putting their culture into a time warp compared to other regions in the game. Instead, allow this region to blend in with what's going on with the rest of the game. Take Prey from 2022, for example. This movie serves as a prequel to the Predator series and takes place in the 18th century. Despite it being a sci-fi genre, it is still extremely faithful to the culture of the Comanche tribe. There was quite a bit of effort put in to make sure that there was accurate representation. It is important to note, however, that you don't need to use traditional indigenous imagery in order to have proper representation. Your characters don't need to live in huts, and they don't need to dress traditionally. And you sure as hell don't need to throw headdresses around like they're party hats. Indigenous people can look and dress like anyone else. They, like the rest of the world, are capable of technological progress. This doesn't mean they don't still have issues unique to them that can be told, however. Take Reservation Dogs as an example. Sure, the characters in that series don't face the exact same problems their ancestors would have faced centuries ago. Even still, their historical trauma gives them issues that are unique to them. The after effects of settler colonialism still play a great role to this day for many people, and those stories are still waiting to be told. One thing you must avoid, however, is falling victim to writing poverty porn. Poverty porn refers to media that exploits the poor's condition in order to further an agenda. Sure, you're aware of the issues many indigenous people face, even in the modern world. They still don't need to be defined by these issues, however. At the end of the day, they are still people with a full range of emotions. Struggling can still be happy. While it isn't a work of fiction, Children of the Plains shows just how poverty porn can be. The documentary shows the lives of different school children on the Pine Ridge Reservation. It only ever focuses on the struggles these children face and rarely ever shows the beauty of their lives. Avoiding poverty porn makes your characters so much more complex and therefore much more enjoyable. Miserable characters can only be interesting for so long.